Hey guys, how's everyone doing tonight? About 2 minutes till we go live. Hey guys, welcome back. Day 9. 9 of 33 days of Dwarf for Extra Life 2019. It's 8 o'clock. Let's get started. I'm running a little low on wood. Go forth, my horde of haulers. Decapitate every tree on the surface. What's the Dwarf Fortress equivalent of the Warhammer pit? Wood for the wood god? Not quite right. And here, before much longer, we'll look at getting weapons manufactured en masse to put our entire dwarven population into the military as reservists. Our crossbow bolts will blot out the sun. Of course, it won't matter because we'll do all our fighting underground, but, we could. Slowly we trim back the rooted menace. Hey, Clinadev. So let's talk for a moment about trees in the future. This embark does not have an abundance of wood generating areas. The surface is generating trees, but the feather trees take a long time to grow up, and the cacti generate only no more than about 2 or 3 logs per felling. So this doesn't generate a whole lot of wood. Even one of these en masse clearings is only going to get us, maybe 3/4 of this room filled. So, I'm thinking we'll clean out an area, and if necessary, irrigate it and let it grow up. This narrow hallway is because we'll set this off to a low traffic area and then door it off when it's not in use so that we don't push pathfinding too hard. This space is actually going to end up being multiple Z levels tall before we're done. Guess we'll pull it back that way a little bit better. Now, in order to make this work, once we've mined out a couple of floors, we're actually going to have to uh, do a little flooding, controlled flooding, in order to make this muddy so that we can have cave moss and trees grow on it. And in essence, we're creating a cavern. So if you want to think of it, we're basically creating one of these caverns, but ours is self-contained. It has no outside influence, so nothing can get in there, nothing spawns in there that's going to attack our dwarves or anything like that. Possibly some vermin, maybe at the worst. What are all the... Oh, we're doing a bunch of hauling because of all the tree stuff. Yeah. Forgotten beasts are still rampaging around down there. And the humans have brought us 4 wagon loads of goods. Ah, migrants. No, we don't care about the coal condition on this job because we're doing all of our clay crafting on magma furnaces. If you were doing your clay industry strictly within a coal production facility, that's to say you had to make charcoal or you've got to make coke into from coal, then you probably don't want to take that off. You want to make sure you've got some coke left over for your smiths to use, for example. Senjai got whacked by the were lizard fairly on. Outside of those, a couple that we've had early on, I don't think we've had anybody die in a while now. Um, we lost one to a mood because I think he went into a mood right as we were leaving, and I didn't remember he was in a mood when we came back, and so we just didn't notice he was missing something. We had one guy. Let's see. No, that was death to the mule, death to the were lizard. I don't think we lost anybody to the ogres or the trolls. The rock didn't get anybody. The giant didn't get anybody except the elf merchant. Which is kind of a shame because it wrecked my opportunity to trade for the season, so I'm kind of pissed about that. But since he's now rotting in a cage in our wall for all the time, it kind of balances out a little bit. And I think that's all we're going to do here. You can't do a product on this one. This is forcing it to be fire clay, so that if we do find some other kind of clay or somehow import some, for example, because some merchant died and we confiscate all his goods, then it doesn't use it for purposes of making our clay crafts. Other types of clay have to be glazed before they can be used as pots. You can make rude earthenware crafts, but it's not safe to use those. For those of you who aren't familiar with pottery, it's not safe to use earthenware if it's not been glazed for food, because earthenware has tiny little pores in it, and it will basically over time build up bacteria in all those pores, and you're not going to be able to scrub it out. Um, which is why modern crockery that you use in your kitchens is glazed. It's prevents that problem, or it's porcelain, which is stoneware and is not porous. Fire clay makes porcelain in this case in Dwarf Fortress, so it's a non-porous clay and doesn't require glazing in order to use it as pots, which is one of the reasons why we started off making clay pots right away and not stone pots. In a typical fortress, I would have made rock pots instead. But if fire clay is available, fantastic. So let's talk about where we are and where I want to go before I kind of call this fortress good. Like I said, at this point, the fortress is fairly stable. We could run it until we decided to literally do something that would get it killed. I don't think anything other than siege cleanup and the broken stress mechanic is really going to threaten it at this point. Um, Especially if we can get the weapon traps up that I wanted to get up originally. Oops, I broke that, didn't I? Okay, let's tell our broker we really need him to get up here now. I forgot to do that earlier. But other than that, yeah, I mean, we lost a couple because we basically got ambushed and we were unprepared early on. And that's the were lizard or the were llama that attacks you in those first couple seasons is probably the hardest thing to be prepared for. If it happens to be someone with some relatively decent combat skills, that were animal's going to be hard to deal with if your dwarves don't have them. You can button up quicker than we did. I left the defenses down a lot longer than I should have. It's been a while. I might be a little rusty. Don't tell anyone. So, what I generally expect for us to see in this fort is that we'll run along working on the minor projects I would normally do for a fortress stream right up until we hit that first siege cleanup, and then we're going to see how the stress mechanic starts to break down, I suspect. In a typical fort prior to V4412, probably before V44, to be honest with you, um, most of my dwarves would have been running in the high end of the happiness spectrum over here, based on having a decent fort, plenty to do without being overworked. Socialization would have had time to happen. I had plenty of idlers by the time a fort got mature. But in the current fort and with the current mechanics, dwarves tend towards the middle. And that's going to work right up until we have something really unpleasant to do. And then the choice is going to be how many dwarves do we expose to the really unpleasant thing? Siege cleanup is like the stress equivalent of a Chernobyl, apparently, from what I've been reading. It's better if you don't have large numbers of parts. So in a typical fort I would have built and was originally intending to build uh, weapon traps with a high density of trap parts, 10 per trap, like I normally would. Because the intent is, step there, it minces you into little tiny bits, and you're dead, and then it resets for the next guy, and he has a chance to go through it. Um, the problem is that all those bits mean all that cleanup means all the dwarves running through the trail of body parts over and over again for long extended periods of time means giant PTSD trauma, and your dwarves have problems with all of this. So, we're probably going to use fewer weapons in each trap in order to create fewer parts. We'll probably use blunt weapon traps, which I normally wouldn't use. With the intent being that things which would be subject to weapons will be bludgeoned to death rather than sliced into limbs and component bits. Hopefully, thereby to minimize cleanup and dumping. I am wondering in my heart of hearts, however, the evil part of me that says, why are we not doing this? If we wouldn't be better to dig ourselves a refuse pit very near the entrance for the purposes of destroying garbage. Flip the internal fort switch off, turn on the siege cleanup, flip on the one outside. All the dumping gets done 10 feet from the corpses, and hopefully it's done very quickly. Since you're dropping the stuff down a hole, you can create a diagonal to minimize the miasma, just like we did in the butcher's area. If it was on the surface, you could theoretically go down a level and then dig the diagonal, or build a little surface garbage shed for the purposes of creating the diagonal to contain the miasma. I think maybe we will do this. We can control which dumping zone is active so that we don't get people taking stuff from the butcher shop all the way out here unless we forget. Sorry, there you go. I apologize. Long story short, you probably won't have the kaolinite. That's pretty rare by comparison to fire clay. Yep, I was wrong. I said porcelain instead of stoneware at one point. My wife is back here goading the shit out of me. You should hear this. You should hear this. It's hilarious. She's going to be reminding me of this for a week. And about pottery and clay, no less. You see, and now she's thanking me for reminding her. Oy, the suffering travails of the married man. It's horrible. Horrible. A week? What? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's a week? No, we've only been doing it for a week, mate. This first week, and well, I guess now it's 8 days, so, I'm kind of rounding. We haven't done it for 33 days yet, dude. Okay, so there's not enough. See, this is a guy hauling a stone by hand. We don't want this. That means there's not enough wheelbarrows somewhere. That's something to keep an eye out for. This is the limonite. I think we have one stockpile for that, but I think we only assigned it like three, I think, maybe wheelbarrows, which is probably not enough if a lot of those jobs come up all at once, maybe, or a lot of those slots come up all at once. We can always turn this up. It's not a big deal. I don't mind. They share a spot. So, in each one of these spots where there's a wheelbarrow, it's also the item that's being stored there wherever there's a full stockpile. This one's empty. So we could turn these up and allow more dwarves to use wheelbarrows. If we're getting enough jobs that people are doing stone hauling jobs by hand, then you need more wheelbarrows. Well, I'm not technically sure. My wife is just laughing at me because it's about pottery. To be honest, I'd have to look to see what the difference specifically is between kaolinite as a stone versus fire clay. That's actually not. It's not like it refers to a very specific thing. It's a collection of different clays. It's Dwarf Fortress is having to simplify things a little here. There are different kinds of clays. It's an enormous variety of them. Different grogs, so each clay has different consistencies and stuff that's mixed in with it. It's a huge subject. It's not so much like I say that Tony got it wrong or right. It's that Dwarf Fortress isn't trying to be hyper realistic about its clay. And there's a point where I have to say, hey, we might want that to be below the level of the simulation. Dwarf Fortress does enough detail for its pottery for the game it is. Is our broker finally here? I haven't checked yet. Let's see. Is he here? Yes! I wonder, can you melt blocks? I'm going to try it. Let's see if you can melt a block. At least native gold, I'm thinking maybe. Worth a shot. If it doesn't work, well, what the hell? It ran me what, 150 dwarf bucks? So that's what, one mug? I think our trading will survive. Oh, for a moment I thought that said grizzly bear and I was going to say cage. No, water skin's not going to do it. Meat, meat, meat. At some point I can kind of switch plants off or into a lower priority mode by switching some of the farms off, maybe turn off the plump helmets because we've got enough rope reeds to handle the cloth industry and the brewing and the cooking. And you see what I'm saying? We don't need as much as we're producing or as much as we're capable of producing. Meat, 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 and some wool for fun. I'm not buying the one with decorations, and I don't really care that they're copper in this case because somebody's using them for mining. And as far as mining goes, copper and iron and steel picks are all the same. I could be buying the ones with decorations on them, but they're just more expensive for the same item. They don't perform any better. There's no purpose and no advantage in having them. But the regular ones, I can buy them and just add them to our stockpile. They're not expensive. 88 is less than a whole mug. I mean, it's not worth worrying about. Inconsequential expense opens up the possibility of wider mining later if I decide I want to. Oops, not that, I don't think. I don't think they have silk, which is kind of unfortunate. You'd think that. So, has the game added. It's still just cave spiders for silk in the world, isn't it? No silkworms. Are there mulberries in the world? I must look and see if mulberries have been added. Acquiring mulberries, which could only be grown on the surface to feed silkworms as an alternative to giant cave spider silk farming for lower value silk might be interesting. More expense, more effort, more reliable method of silk. Seems wrong somehow that the only source of silk in the world is spider silk in this world. kind of a shame. Seems wrong somehow. Okay, 14,000 bucks. Let's see here. Okay. One, two, three. Done. And now that I've secured the critical stuff, I can go back and say, well, what would be nice to have? And you can take away my junk clothing for it. Because as our folks reply, and large alpaca wool socks belong to humans, not us. Those can go, go, go. As our dwarves get rid of their old junk, they will mark it with an X like this because it's been worn down. I mean, not worn as used. And then when it gets exchanged into the bins, we can just have the merchants haul it away. At this point, anything we trade for is just icing on the cake. Okay, and now we're around the horn. So now we get another, oh, call it 1,800 bucks worth of whatever we want just because. Wow, what the hell's got that so valuable? Oh, well-designed image, blah, blah, blah. It's a really pretty scroll. All right, that's good. He can have it. And then we'll just pull everything out of the depot. If we start seeing cave spider silk show up in the tree farm, then I may try to implement a cave spider silk farm. I don't think in this fortress it's likely we'll get a giant cave spider silk farm up because I would have to deal with the two forgotten beasts in order to try to get one, I believe. And that's going to take a while before our dwarves would be that trained. Zugabar Doom. Come on, y'all, sing along. We'll see. If we get to that point, that would be nice. It's gonna be a while. That's a lot of terrain to excavate. Realistically, we know the caves are not down this far, so or below this, so we can run the tree farm a long way down, 3 or 4 levels maybe, and still have plenty of room to grow trees tall if we want before we cut them. Still our forgotten beast down there rampaging it up on the cavern creatures. Want to buy a good giant cave spider bite on it. My hunters usually include at least one and usually more of the folks who have trappings. So like I said, if we get lucky, get a good tree farm going, and we start to see cave spiders in there, well, then we'll start to send in the trappers and see if we can't clump them together in a cave spider farm. If you can capture it, you should. If you can. Generally speaking, if you're not prepared to capture it when you get started, it's hard to try and do it afterward because it'll start webbing people up, and that's bad. It'll go for the head after that. Fight, 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 bite, bite, bite. If you've got cage traps down, theoretically you can capture them. It's one of those things where, in order to do it, you have to have circumstances come together just right, or you have to set up very early for it and just basically go fishing. Looks like we've got some animals here that need to be pastured. Okay, that takes care of that. Did we ever get the cage built in the middle of this room? No. Or rather, we probably got it designated and it never got actually built in the wall. Speaking of in the wall, did we actually get... No. Not escaping his fate. Crashes are not going to help him. Rampage echoed means it's killed some number of worthwhile or important figures. Since cave spiders have a paralyzing, if I recall correctly, paralyzing venom, they can ruin somebody's day if they land that bite early and they succumb to the paralysis. You can't breathe. Ain't no dwarven iron lung. We need to enlarge the raw food stockpile because it is starting to become rather well full. Meanwhile, our miners are still on a years long rampage to clear out the tree farm, so this is going to take a while. It really comes down, in my eyes, to whether you had a plan in place to capture it before you engaged it. If you weren't planning to capture it before you engaged it, you have to kill it. You probably just got to put it down. If you're lucky and you had some way to retreat and fall back behind a bridge, say, and delay until you could capture it, then maybe. Which is why, if I'm going to puncture the caverns at some point, there's going to be an airlocked bridge where I can move my military or whoever into the airlock, seal it up, let them out, and then do what they need to be done, pull them back into the airlock. To be honest, I don't know that I've ever gotten bothered with a giant caves or giant cave silk spider farm. Ugh, spider silk farm. Go on, get your workshop. Crummy leather artifact incoming! Oh, hold up. This is that Yeah, hang on a minute. That's right, because we had a crash, so we reverted. That damn were lizard is still potentially out there. Um, Caged guest. Yes, guest forever. I think somebody got him already, though. Okay, good. Or else it took off. Where is he at? Oh, nice. Stealth were lizard is taking out the human caravan guards like one at a time here. Awesome. And I've got to redesignate the entire archery squad. Fantastic. Assume that means that there is a cessation of hostilities involving the end of our poor were lizard here. Yes, it does appear to be the case. He straight up ganked those guards, though. One out here, all by his lonesome, ganked him, then come over here and gank this guy, and then come around the corner and start on the merchants. That were lizard knew how to villain. I'ma build up to it. Let their fear do the work. Yeah, webbed is bad. Webbed is like paralysis, except it'll keep doing it to you over and over again. Oh, Shelob. I mean, the giant cave spider gets a hold of your guys. That's bad. If you're lucky, they recover. To the refuse pit. Also unforbid. So first it starts on a human bowman. We'll make sure none of our guys got involved here somehow. Human bowman, human bowman, human bowman, blah, 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 human bowman. Human bowman, wrong place, wrong time, blah, 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 blah. Getting the snot kicked out of him. Whackada, whackada, whackada. Lasher happens on the on the scene. Lasher, 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 lasher. All the way down, all the way down. Lasher, Were Lizard with the Mace Man shows up, and then stuff starts to turn for the worse here. Mace Man, Mace Man, Mace Man, Lasher, 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 Swordsman. Yeah, this is all them and none of us, which is what I want. Because if they're going to go all were animal on it, rather them do it somewhere other than here. One wonders if it is possible when playing as a were animal in adventurer mode to deliberately make minor attacks and infect the populace at large so as to depopulate cities and create entire exclusion zones of were animals. Well, unfortunately, I could designate a place for them to go, and be buried with honors, yada, 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 but, well, coffins take effort. Coffins take effort. They did. Ain't us. So it's off to the refuse pit for them. Hmm. Thought we already removed the ramp and it won't let me build a stockpile there. I'm not sure why. Okay, he wants a thong. He can have a thong. Ooh, looks like one of the merchants hacked it too. That's unfortunate. Of course, standard rules apply, unfortunately. If they die on our spot, we got to take their stuff. Well, there's no way to give it back. We'll hand them a couple of free discs next year for good measure. And I hope the discs were actually on the wagon because if they weren't, well, then they're here and they got nothing for all that stuff they gave us. Which is, great for our bank account and really poor for keeping good relations up. Now, what we'll eventually build is a serpentine path consisting of a three wide wagon path, serpentining the entire width of this corridor, all the way up and down, all the way back and forth until it reaches over here, with the intent that anything that comes into this area that's not a wagon will cross the short way. And if the drowning trap is open, they'll proceed through the drowning trap to predictable consequences. While the drowning trap is resetting, we can allow creatures to walk across this area and seal this bridge at some point, but allow them to walk across this area and we can populate it with weapon traps of bladed or blunt variety. And while this initial set is lethal and with the intent to cause a few pieces, the rest we'll probably do in something else, like maybe nickel if we can. I don't think you can do nickel balls, but we'll see. Regrettably, no, only weaponable materials, plus glass and wood. They say woods for weapons, but no, no. Okay, so let's do copper balls instead of giant X blades. Sorry, guys, I'm double checking on the wiki just to make sure that what I remember about the trap components is true universally, because I remember it's true for axe blades, but I wasn't sure if the spiked balls. Okay, so it's a lesser yield, but it's still positive. That's what I wanted to verify. Because before I start replacing what I'm going to do here, so we're going to go down and look for Forge Giant Copper Axe Blade, and we're going to remove that guy. Gone. Now, the intent here is that we'll do two things. One, manufacturing spiked copper balls over and over and over again will build up weaponsmithing on one or more dwarves who have weaponsmithing as a skill. Now, we could spread that out to our haulers, but right now I'm confining it to our smiths. We can also then turn around and melt any of them that are less than masterwork quality. We don't want to melt the masterworks because that pisses off the dwarf that made them, but we can melt all the lower quality ones down and remanufacture them. And when we do, melting them down and remaking them gives us an additional yield of the material used to make them. So if you put in 1 bar, you get back 1.2 bars. And the fractional bars do stack up in the furnace where it's smelted. It's not global. You don't get the bonus elsewhere. But once a furnace completes an extra bar, presto, there's your bar. So we can smelt the copper down to produce additional copper, generate masterworks in the process, which we could sell for enormous, quantities of dwarf box, or use them in our trap components while melting some down to produce additional yield to generate additional trap components. This gives our dwarves something to claim. Dwarves like to have, in the new version, like to have jewelry. This gives them something to claim. The barrels and the mechanisms are for the fortress, and the flasks are for the military, but the crowns, bracelets, earrings, and amulets can be used by the general citizenry. Melting normally only gives you a third of material back. I encourage you to check the wiki, and if it is incorrect, I encourage you to correct it. But the wiki is currently listing trap components as having a yield greater than 100%. Coins and bolts, as I recall, suffer from the same issue. If you make a stack of them, split them individually, and then melt them individually, the overall yield is greater than what you put in. Now, it's a pain, unless you have some sort of automated script to do it for you, but it can be done the same way there. And the problem basically is that all those little fractions of what you are melting down are adding up. Now, in the case of the giant components, like the trap components, it's probably just that it's set wrong. That'll get fixed at some point down the road. We won't be able to do that anymore. We'll actually have to hunt down and mine out all the terrain, which I'm loath to do because it provides pathfinding issues. If you're paying attention, our FPS is already starting to dip from where it was originally. We're running at about 2/3 of the dwarves we'll get. We'll add a few more animals than we have, and we could potentially have a siege or some more visitors. So we'll drop down fairly low. I don't think we'll drop all the way to 0. We're also not running mist generators and water reactors and Okay, not super long now. The good news is that in this process, we hit at least a one, possibly two limonite veins. There's coal mixed in here that they've been picking up along the way. Just for my own amusement, what are we looking at in terms of minerals? Oh, so there is some tetrahedrite around. Okay. I thought I remember reading it was. All this zinc. All this zinc. Yeah, so the reason I'm choosing the items I'm choosing is that I've looked them up and verified that currently they're positive yield. Otherwise, you wouldn't want to run this kind of cycle. You'd be at a loss at the whole way. You'd put a bar in, get a half a bar back, put another bar in, get a half a bar back, use that bar up, get half that back. It'd be a constant loss the entire time. You wouldn't want to do it. If you broke even, if it was 1 to 1, yeah, okay. If you had an abundance and the loss wasn't great, maybe you could do it. If you were getting 90% back and you're, 10,000 bars in the black, you may not care about the 1% of the 10% of a bar you lose, 1 in 10 bars. But this trick we can use to develop skill for our dwarves. And now they're excavating the extra food stockpile space. And so what we'll do is we'll set up a food stockpile here, tell it to take barrels and tell it to take from the other food stockpile. And this effectively then becomes the main stockpile with that one as overflow. As before, no unprepared fish. It needs to be prepared over there where the fisheries are. There's no point in dragging it all the way over here to store it, only to drag it all the way back to prepare it, only to drag it all the way back over here to store it again. Bad idea. We don't want to do that. If we disable eggs, that allows us to force the hatching of our birds. I believe at this point we have a sufficient quantity of birds to run a year or so without having to worry about replenishing their numbers because I think we have a full capacity of female and male chicks, for example. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to get some egg storage going. We don't want drinks, those are in a different area. We don't want prepared food, that's in a different area too, or at least it should be. And while lye and milk of lime aren't things, I'm not going to worry about it too much. We're not going to eat them, but the additional storage isn't going to hurt us any. Not really. Set this up to take from the stockpile upstairs. And it will drain all those barrels downstairs as the haulers get time. It appears that our fourth screw press never actually got built. Ah, the cage is done. Now for the great caging. All of those little birds can get jammed in a cage. They do not graze, they do not require food. You can store them like reams of paper in a cage until they mature. And then butcher them, let them out. Doesn't matter. Whatever you're going to do to deal with them. Usually, about this time, your farmers and folks who have animal handling as a hauling duty will come along en masse and deal with them. But I think our haulers might actually be busy with a whole lot of stuff at the moment. We're running fairly low on idlers. Not a lot of praying going on here, so we kind of need to give folks a chance to cool off here for a bit before we do much else. In prior versions, I would have advised that you keep your dwarves absolutely run to the ragged gills busy. Completely slammed with whatever you could give them. Every task under the sun, no idlers, as long as you could run that sensibly. Because dwarves didn't complain about it. In current versions, they do need to complete some crafts. But if they're not given a chance to pray, if they're not given a chance to socialize in the temple, if they're not simply organic robots any longer. Now they're semi organic androids. Damn, is there nothing to hunt on this map but tigerfish? What was. Didn't we have hippos originally? Weren't there hippos at the start of this map? And I was like, nah, we won't go near those to start with. No, no, leave those guys alone. Let's get some weapons in the military and, then maybe we'll have some hunters later. Haven't seen a hippo since. Tigerfish. Tigerfish everywhere. Ugh. So there's something I would want. There's something we could implement if it was up to me. You can implement bowline fishing and thereby give a use to rope that is not done better by chain. Because that way rope is light. I mean, compared to an iron chain, a pigtail rope has got to be lighter, right? I haven't looked, but I'm fairly certain that should be true. At that point, you'd want to equip your hunters with rope and not chain. We'll make some additional nest boxes so we can start producing eggs. And so our next giant laying of chicks is hyper productive. Because if we double check animals and we look at Auto Butcher for an easy count, peafowls are maxed out. So our current adults basically have until these guys grow up to survive. And then they're going to get butchered, and we'll have that many adults. Since the birds arrive in waves, because the eggs get laid in waves, you'll end up with this perfect graduating class of birds moving along, with the chicks being butchered with each new season and the ones that aged out being butchered right alongside them. A floating middle window of poultry meat. Okay, that we can stop right now. We do not need that much barley. And we'll just change those over. As I recall, we are way overstocked on drinks. Running like 2,000? Yeah, we don't need that many. All right, the traps are being assembled. We do not yet have the necessary components. And that'll get them boiling them down into additional iron and copper for us. Which point we'll also start getting the copper balls made that we need. Okay, none of these levers have been linked up, so let's link up this one first. And this guy is the bronze gate. With only the finest zinc mechanisms. All right. Okay then. Just checking on the soap stocks to make sure we have some. Still need my gold. Need skins. Can't find something to hunt. Can't find something to hunt because it's all tigerfish. Don't have any tetrahedrite mined. Can't hunt in the river. Wine, wine, wine. It is safe to excavate en masse like this, provided you do it one level at a time from top to bottom, never exceeding more than one level and always providing an exit for your dwarves. If you designate more than one Z level for excavation in this fashion, your dwarves will screw it up. Someone will cave something in, someone will fall, something's going to get busted, someone will die. I guarantee it. You might get lucky the first time, might get lucky the second time, might be lucky the 10th time. Sooner or later, it will happen. Dwarves are not that smart. Moreover, it is more accurate to refer to them as mostly dependable agents. They can interrupt jobs for all sorts of reasons, and that can leave their processing of a. While I'm thinking of it, though, we really don't have enough miners, I don't think. And this is a good time to educate a new set. No, they will not be particularly fast to start. They will be slow as hell. But they will participate and they will get better. And it's free training. Nuts. We're not quite ready for this yet. I don't really have a good solution for it other than button up and wait for the moment. So they're coming in from the north into the map. They don't have a good way in through the fishing hut. They'll have to move in through the... Yeah, there's not a good way in that way either. That leads in through the flooded reservoir. They drown on the way in that way. And it's sealed up by the bridge to boot, so there's no way in that way unless they want to kill themselves. So that leaves them coming in the bunker entrance, which is further south and has a few cage traps around it. So a few of them are going to get caged if they actually come all the way over here. The merchants have already left, so we don't have to worry about sealing this up. It's just a matter of giving anybody who might be on the surface a chance to... Let's zoom out a bit here and see if we've got anybody coming into the burrow. We may notice a huge amount of spam here for a moment, but I'm hoping not. Not seeing anybody making moves back towards us. For now, we will seal the door, because that's the first thing we can do to take control of the situation. And these guys will wander presumably along whatever path they had originally until they meet an obstruction, and that obstruction is going to be a pile of cage traps and a raised bridge. I suspect some portion of them will end up in the cage traps, at which point they will break and the first siege will be over, and this cleanup will be a cakewalk. Possibly they'll also get distracted by tigerfish, fall in the river, and drown, or something equally improbable. But my money is follow the path through the cage traps, get screwed, and what do we lose here? Oh, cat outdoors. Come on in, boys. The cage traps are fine. Appears they may need a little gentle persuasion. That's right. We have dogs. Come kill the dogs. You know you want to. Come kill the dogs. Yoink. Nope. Also, yoink. They don't want to start shit with that bard or whatever it is. But nobody can get in. The bard's hanging out in the right place. The bard's got the right idea. And the only question is, how long did I build the drawbridge? Is it all the way out to the far end of the traps, or does it come up one short? Did I go 5, or did I go 4? I think I went 4. Let's find out. Bing! Will the bard figure it out? Because the siege is gonna sooner or later. Not gonna wait forever, dumbass. The hell is this, another bard or something arriving here? Seriously? Oh, I think they just broke. They are moving away in short order. Look at them run. Tiny amount of cage traps. They bumbled into them in the stupidest way possible, wiped out half their own troops, and then fled off the map. Okay, Squad A. Catch, kill, and loot that one. Squad B. Catch, kill, and loot this one. Squad C. Yeah, you know what's coming. He's a little slow. Let's see how fast he gets off the map. It'll take them a minute to get here. Better run, Gobby Gob. It's getting dwarfy. Okay, now we need to turn around and get rid of the alert. The siege is broken. They fled. We need to turn off the alert because our civs are all in the burrow, and we don't want that. So we'll switch back to the active training mode, switch all of our guys back to their active training schedule, which should put them on the rotation again. Those people who are not supposed to be on duty will go off duty. Those who are supposed to be on duty will stay on duty. I think they've just gotten themselves screwed because they're going to combat training that's being led by a guy who's laying over there currently bleeding to death because no one's going to come and pick him up. Oh, maybe they're going to figure it out. They're slowly meandering that they think they figured out that they're not going to be able to do the training that they were intending to do. And somebody looks like they're on the way to rescue our dear dwarf. He might get medical attention. Some of our guys are doing a really shitty job of hanging on to all their stuff. Two spears and two shields, so that's two people who lost their gear. Only one guy's down. Zinc cages. And for those of you who are wondering, the reason is because we have an abundance of sphalerite on site. We have more. Oh, that's right. We never expanded our bar block stockpile because a crash. Oh, good. We'll get some tetrahedrite out of all this. Now, as I recall, we did not fully set this up. This will only take goblets. That's right. Good. It needs not barrels, but bins. It needs to take from. Oh, that's hard. Let's see. Where is our main stockpile? There it is. Is that really where we put it? Huh. Okay. If I've done that right, it will pick up an enormous number of goblets. And then this will have rough gems set on it, as I recall. Yes, good. And this would be our cut gems. And then what we will do is this will give to this, this, and this. And this will give to all three of these. This will give to each of these in turn. And then we will simply cut everything on repeat until we run out of everything we have available to cut. We really don't care after that what it is. The intent is that we will cut all the gems down, bang, 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 into bins. Those will go across the hall, basically, to the cut gem repository. We'll then stockpile an enormous number of goblets in this room, and the goblets and the cut will be applied, we'll have the cut gems applied to them as ornamentation. The combination can then be sold as desired. We get to depict what things we encrust with. I'm reasonably certain there's a way to do this with fire clay in some way, at which point it becomes an infinite resource. But if not, then if we have a source of sand, I have to double check which soils we have on site. If we have a sand, then we can do it with glass, and you can use raw green glass as a cut gem, get cut glass, and use that as your encrusting material, which means that you can then make clay goblets, fire clay goblets with green glass inlays infinitely, and both base materials are worth more than most stones. Well, I thought it was the teacher, but I'm not sure it was actually the teacher. I think it was one of the others. But let's double check because I want to make sure our guys are actually getting him healed up. We don't have a traction bench, so we need to build one of those really quickly if we can because somebody needs to be immobilized. We have people who need sutures, people who need to be cleaned. We don't have a water source. We need to work on that. Ideally, we would have a well by now, but we've never built one because I was being a stickler for getting gold, and we don't have fucking gold on the site, so we're just going to do it out of zinc and the fuck it. Zinc chain, zinc bucket, zinc everything, all the way down the line. Done. Um, all kinds of impairments. Grasp and stand impaired. Yeah, not good. These three got themselves pretty well banged up. Good job, guys. No infections yet, though. We've got soap, so they should get themselves washed at least. It might not be the best water, but, soap. I think I already had a job for zinc mechanisms, but let's make sure our doctors are idle on everything except doctoring. At that point, the only labor they've got is go take care of patients. I'll typically go down through the fortress. Well, I'm not sure why those guys have surgery set on. That must have been a misclick and a half. Okay. I'll typically go down through the fortress and look for people who might have a skill but not be doctors at a reasonable or, a lot of these things are take care of patients' skills rather than diagnosis. Unfortunately, they have to be diagnosed first. And while we could have Dr. Clinidev, we apparently have Waxworker Clinidev. You could have been a doctor, man. Sorry. It looks like all of these guys did well. It's the spearmen who were pretty raw to begin with were out there early and didn't have probably don't have their full equipment on yet and got mauled a little bit. Bunch of novices rushed the van. Ah, it was horrible. But he didn't run fast enough, and now his stuff is our stuff. And there'll be a little bit of cleanup this way, so some of these folks will get exposed a little bit to this bad stuff without getting mauled all at once by a siege cleanup, a big siege cleanup. Now, if this was RimWorld, there'd be an incentive to let these guys loose in order to make friends with their faction. This is Dwarf Fortress, man. That's not how this works. Now, let me think. I believe it was that you told all this you wanted to dump all of it, but then you reclaimed the cages and the goblins. Been way too long, though. I may have to look this up. But I do have another idea. That is a good point. Nobody in Dwarf Fortress is happy to see a doctor. Hi, welcome to your amputation. I am Dr. Nick. Yeah, not gonna end well. I'm Dr. Urist. Give me a second, guys. I know. Remember, there's a way to do this, and I forgot how to empty cages here. It's been so long that I've forgotten how to pull it up. Yeah, okay. So I did remember it right. It's dump everything and then reclaim, uh, or it's reclaim everything and then dump everything and then go back through and mark the cages. That's what I thought. I'll bet I didn't mark them for reclaiming the first time through. That's our problem. That should get some haulers coming along here shortly, I'm thinking, if we've done it right. And they're starting to remove the gear from the goblins, which is what we want. Prisoners get no equipment, shackled and naked in your cages, awaiting your trip down the pit, which we haven't built yet, but you can wait patiently for it to be completed. Now, Clinidev, has somebody come up with a better way to keep bees in the current version, or is the current version still kind of Build a deep pit and or tower and then stick it somewhere where only flyers could get in. Because before climbing, you could just build an enclosure basically and make it accessible only from the inside. Stick your hives inside it, basically build a courtyard. Probably would be a good idea if we designated this area as the water source as well. It's not ideal, but it's a well. So, what do we want? Well, that's pretty simple, really. At this point, we've got plenty of our own plant cloth. We don't need that anymore. We can make our own far better. We can make rope reeds season after season after season after season. We will always need, however, unless we decide to get really crazy with our, try to do this with my offhand and don't have the muscle memory for it. There we go. It's the other key, you big dummy. The other key. There we go. We'll always need leather because we're going to be constantly needing to make replacement cloaks and hoods for our uh, military dwarves. It's probably not a bad idea to consider making gloves for our civilians as well. We've got, I think, robes and trousers and shoes and hoods, I think, being made for them. Caps, maybe. I'll have to look. We can always use bars. Uh, yeah, no, I really want everything because we might get moods and moods get finicky. So, bars. All the bars. And we'll take the gems because you never know, somebody might want something and it's good to have an abundance of them. Realistically, I think cut glass satisfies the need for gems for moods, but we don't have any yet. I haven't actually made any. Might as well import the instruments. We can make our own, ornament them in the whole 9 yards, but it's quicker this early to simply import a bunch of them. Stick them all in the tavern. We can always replace them later. Bags of sand gives us sand for glass and free bags, basically. Although we can shear some of our animals, we still need a little of this just to offset usage and demand. Probably need to check though, because we might be doing okay on that now. We don't care about those other clays. Ew. And that brings us back around. Yeah, you don't give us any seeds we really care about here. Okay. Yep. What do you want to buy? Not much that we care about, really. We could make earrings, I suppose. Zinc earrings coming up. Now, to be fair, the amount of deaths we've had is exceptional for one of my streams. We don't normally have anywhere near that number of deaths. At least not without a really big siege. Somebody must be busy with all that zinc. Hasn't got to the copper yet. Yeah, there's a lot of jobs going on here. These weapon traps are intended to kind of thin down the number of people who survive through the to get into the cage traps. The first couple cage traps will just basically capture goblins with mortal injuries, basically. But the in order to keep them from bumbling through en masse, this will kind of grind up a couple as they come through. Less like a total brick wall, more like a filter. I mean, Kleina Dev, you got to stop and think for a moment. You've been military commander since before we killed the Rock. I want to say all the way back to when we fought the cave ogre and the trolls. So that's literally from the first fights of the fortress. You've been at the forefront because you were in the first squad of military. Because waxworker, but um, you we haven't had anything yet that's challenged the military. I'm not sure that we will, provided our military stays relatively organized. The only reason we had a problem with this last fight with those two guys is they're new spearmen. They just arrived. I don't think my spearmen collectively have 12 points of skill between them. I've been looking into beekeeping. I think it would be kind of neat to set up a pottery studio in my garage and raise bees, make my own mead, and put it in my own bottles. Forgotten beasts are still thrashing around, waiting for that one cave troll that gets the lucky punches the brain into the skull. Yep, our potters are managing to go through the clay pretty good now. And we'll force a few collect clay jobs. Because I'd really like to open up the kilns a little further, and we'll make clay crafts sort of the bystander for what the average peasant dwarf in our fortress manufactures. What do you make? They can't all be smiths. The smiths, we don't have that much metal. If there was an infinite way to generate an infinite supply of metal from magma, then I would totally be down with every dwarf in my fortress being a smith. That would be awesome. At best, though, you'll get them to dabbling or so, but the problem is you're going to have to use that metal for useful things, so you're back to melting everything they make down. And then waiting on them to mood up, basically, which is doable. Or we can simply create an infinite supply of trade crafts from fire clay or glass. Glass would be my preference, to be honest, even though I think the fire clay is actually more valuable. Okay, our miners are probably still busy upstairs with the new floor. No, we're good. So they'll come all the way down to the bottom of the world to open up our kilns here. And the one up here at least was good. We don't have to fill it. These down here are going to need a channel dug so they have magma. That one's good. That one needs a channel. So when you look, you can kind of see the problem here. So we're going to connect a few. We're going to connect these up so we only have to dig one channel connection of the magma. And that's because the way we're going to do this isn't technically as safe as we would like. It is possible for it to result in a poor melted dwarf who has rolled up the curtain and or rolled down the curtain and joined the choir invisible because he dead. Wanted to take a look at it, make sure I'm doing this right, because you don't want to screw it up around magma if you can avoid it. Now, the advantage to magma, it's worth mentioning since we covered water earlier. Magma does not rise like water. Magma is not gravity pressurized the same way that water is. It's vastly different behavior. So I encourage you to go and look at the difference on the wiki to make sure that you're comfortable with it before you start moving either fluid around. The dynamics of both change if the fluid is pumped. So if you have a pump that's pumping into a confined space, that water is operating under different rules than the standard gravity fed model. Realistically, most of the time, this is okay. It's not a big deal. Not always. The lava basically has to double step on us. We're at the top floor of the lava, so it shouldn't have a whole lot of oomph behind it to get through that hole before we get out of the way. And unless our dwarf is a total fucking slowpoke, he'll take the 2 steps up to the ramp and be out of the way before the magma gets anywhere near him. Actually, I don't want to smooth that one. I want to smooth that one to prevent as much magma from moving into the square all at once as possible. If I did this first one, I've got something like 3 squares of magma all pushing into that one. It will fill up immediately and immediately try to move into the next one and potentially scald our guy quicker. Whereas if I mine this over here, there's only 1 square that moves in. It does so on a diagonal, which is a little slower. and then it's got to move another diagonal after that. And so that's a much reduced flow. We don't care about flow in this application. It's purely about volume, and we want to make sure that this doesn't dip. So realistically, what we would ideally want to do is create a reservoir of magma over which we built the magma forges and pump magma into it or dump magma into it in such a way that once it's in there, it's permanently encapsulated. And then we would never have to worry about, for example, some project later on draining the magma sea too much for our forges to operate. It is possible for a magma forge to fail if you drain the fluid out, if you drain too much fluid out, resulting in, if it's a mood, resulting in the job failing or canceling. But if it's a mood that you cancel in that way, it will immediately send your dwarf nuts. Sprat! Okay, guys, it is 10:45. How time slips away. So as soon as our little engraving here is done, hopefully soon. Come on, guys, you can do it. This is like a season where everybody is on this duty at once. They just may have too many busy at between military and other tasks to come down here and do this. I want it done, and I want it done now. Right, but if you've got 3 7 of 7s pushing into a single square, equalizing of those will be more than 4 of 7, and it will try to spread. There is a safe way to do this, and I will probably have to demonstrate it on stream at some point just for the sake of showing folks how to do it. It's on the wiki, I believe, but it's been a while since I've checked to see if it's still there. There's a trick where you can create a retracting bridge that's magma safe, go underneath it, or seal off access above it, go underneath it, and channel or smooth into the rock above you, and basically mine through the bridge into the wall above the bridge, and then the magma flows through the new hole you've made into the chamber above the bridge, safely away from your dwarf, who then comes back into the fortress. And then the magma flows down its pipe. Safe as houses. I've used it. Oh, yeah, Magma Workshop. Yes, definitely. 4 of 7. So it's usually not a problem for you to have a small a dip in your magma flow. Like, for example, if I built a pump, say, over here, there'd be 6 of 7s running around, and let's say 1 or 2 of them made it all the way over here, no harm, no foul. But if I'm using the same magma inflow for my forges and my magma pump stack that I'm using as a trap, then it's possible for you to pump the magma. Oh, nope, he's good. Good. Just the boulders. Smoke and steam from the boulders going poof. Unpleasant. See these 6 of 7s here. I'm not worried about those. Those aren't enough dip. Even if they, as they run around, they're not going to accumulate into a 4 of 7. It would be an unnatural dip in the flow. Tries to equalize. Now, eventually, I think those will get pushed away as the magma sea eventually will eat them. They'll get off the edge of the map, for example. And we'll get another small dip as this one fills up. A few more 6s added to the mix, as it were. But no harm there. I just, as in like 2 seconds ago, had a. See? Yeah, he'll be safe. He says, oh, sure. He says he'll be safe. Dude made it like 2 steps from there and got vaporized in the smoke cloud. When he finally goes out, we'll bury him. In the words of NBA Jam, he's on fire! That's not CGI, kids. He's actually on fire. And the best part? He screws up. His iron armor survives intact for the replacements. Hell, his trousers didn't even catch fire. Not sure what he was doing, but his trousers didn't catch fire. Somehow his cloak, socks, glove, so I'm guessing he waded in it somehow. Congratulations there, moron. Toad leather. Oh, yeah. Dress, sock, gloves. So it caught fire from the dress and the cloak, would be my guess. Interesting. I mean, not in the actionable, I care about it sense, but in the, well, that was interesting sort of sense. Let's see. I'm going to guess and say that didn't give us a. Ooh, did we ever? No, I don't think we did we? That was naughty. You are needed. We have goods. I haven't seen them telling us that they're going to leave yet, so let's see if we can get our trader up here. He's making a big clay pot like a big dummy instead of getting up here where we need him, unfortunately. So you have to realize he's either at the bottom of the world or headed to the bottom of the world at this moment. And then he's got to come all the way back. And that last selection for the hunter squad that's about to become a military squad was for disease resistance. Now, ordinarily, I prefer, and I haven't really mentioned it, but and I didn't do it for the first squad because I was in such a hurry. But generally, I prefer only guys in the military, and it's not me trying to be sexist. It's the way that Dwarf Fortress handles children and childbirth and pregnancy in dwarves. Unless you're a real, let's call it, detail orientated person, then you're not going to be particularly focused on whether a particular dwarf is pregnant, whether that dwarf is in the military, and whether that dwarf is on active reserve or not, whether they might be called up or not. And even if you are, and you know that they're pregnant, unless you take them off duty immediately and leave them off until they give birth, the chances are they're going to give birth at a really inconvenient moment, like right in the middle of combat or something, and then immediately begin using their babies as shield. Or worse, you run into the problem of if they're still carrying the kid around after they give birth, then they'll carry the kid into combat if they're called up. So you have to leave them off duty until the kid effectively becomes a child and stops being a baby. That's really inconvenient. Now, while it's realistic, I will confess, it would be nice to have a better system of control than micromanaging my dwarves' lives. Ability to have the dwarves say, hey, I can't go to military service, I'm carrying my infant, would be a good thing. Um, I can't go to military service, I waddle because I'm 8 months pregnant, would be a good thing. Hmm. I think our waxworker just bit it. Sorry, man. We were down two in the military squad here, and I looked, and it's the chopper squad. That's yours. You're not in the list. So I've replaced you. Congratulations. Random dwarf number 01 and 02 have just been promoted into the military. All hail random military dwarf 01 and 02. Hail. I must be missing it in the list here somewhere. I know we just assigned someone to this. Ah, that's why. Zan hasn't actually arrived on the map yet. Dwarf therapists can pick them up while they're because they're in memory even before they actually walk on the map. So dwarf therapists can actually pick them up before they arrive officially. You can't actually put them in the military though until they're on the map. So Zan here is needing to be added to our military, but he's just now arriving. There he is. Welcome to the military squad. Grab your equipment, please wash off any remaining blood, and report to duty. Okay, so we're going to let these migrants get wandered in here, pasture up some animals real fast, and then call it. One more turn, one more turn. And everything else is taken care of, so we're good there. And our trader arrived, which is good, but our... No, hasn't arrived yet. No, still on his way. Come on, dude. There he is. He just now arrived. Check that shit out. Can you imagine trying to roll? I mean, there's like 4 pages of gems here. Can you imagine trying to roll that caravan through hostile territory, heaped with nothing but valuable metals, Uncut gems. Man, that's a lot of leather. We did not order up nuts. Need those up here. We're not going to be able to buy nearly as much goods. Like, at all. Come on, haulers! I really want this to happen before I go to bed, but if they leave, then we're just going to call it there. Gaining on it. There we go. That might get it done. Huh. Apparently, there's a lot more value in those sheets than I thought there was. Don't think it's possible to search based on quality markers, which is kind of a shame. Well, we got what we really came for. I didn't think it would let me offer my junk clothing to them, but it was worth a shot. At this point, we're basically just feeding him a little extra profit so he comes back next year super happy like before. And I'm kind of combing through my items looking for things that are damaged or that I might want to sell or get rid of because they're not of any particular value. And now we've got him up to ecstatic. So, call off anything left that hasn't arrived. Need to build ourselves some display cases. But that'll have to wait. Trader is no longer requested, and it's time for me to shut it down, guys. Way longer than I planned to run tonight. I will see you all tomorrow at 8, just like tonight, and every night, pretty much. A couple exceptions along the way, all the way through till 11 too. And on November 2nd, we will play 24 hours from 8 a.m. all the way through to the following day. Before I go, does anybody have any questions? Something they want to see? Anything I didn't cover that they really wanted to look at? All right, guys. Not seeing anything in chat, so I will go ahead and end it here. Thanks for coming out, and if you have the means, please, I'm not doing this for fame, I'm not doing it for money. Down below the stream there, you will find a link to my Extra Life campaign. This is donating strictly to help sick children. I collect this money every year on behalf of a hospital here local that helped me when I was about 35 years younger than I am today. Uh, your donations, your generosity helps people like me be here to do the things that we do for folks who need it. You helping them helps people like me actually be here when it matters. Please, if you have the opportunity and the means, take a moment and donate. Thank you in advance, and I'll see you guys later.